Where is the original Quran? Where is the 7th century complete Quran? Hello everyone, this is Al-Fadi and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of this series that we're doing with Dr. J. Smith about the early Islamic history or the standard Islamic narrative. Today we are asking a fundamental question about the Quran. Where is the original Quran? Where is the 7th century complete Quran? And with me here in studios to answer this question and interact with me is Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, I grew up as a Muslim, believing that the Quran that I have in my hand is the exact replica of the Quran that I found in heaven, the Quran that was revealed to Muhammad, the Quran that was put together by Uthman, the complete Quran.
And here it is.
That's right.
This is the original, complete Uthmanic recension. This is the one that you have been told exists in heaven, sent down to Muhammad over a 22-year period, finalized by Muhammad when he died, and then printed out in its book form by Zayd ibn Thabit, the secretary of Muhammad, who was commissioned by Uthman in 652 to write that.
If you can turn this towards the camera, and I want him to zoom in, there is something interesting that people can see on the book. You are going to start to see some red letters in there, which is interesting.
Okay, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. These are all red letters. There's some blue letters as well, and there's green letters. Now, we're going to be getting to that later on, but certainly this is what they call the original Quran. Now, of course, this has been published in the 21st century, printed in the 21st century. It's the facsimile, it's the manuscripts from this is derived that are from the 7th century. Why? Well, let's look and see what the standard Islamic narrative tells us. So let's go to the slide and let's unpack it. According to the standard Islamic narrative, not according to you, not according to me, this is what every Muslim believes. This is what every Muslim has been told. In the 7th century, we note, I want you to note the cities, which I'm going to put up, in the countries where the earliest Qurans were created. So Muhammad dies in 632. The Quran is not written down when he dies. It is not written down like this at all.
We don't have any evidence that it was.
Well, even the traditions don't say that. No. And Al-Bukhari, you need to go to Al-Bukhari, volume 6, hadith number 509. Hadith number 509 gives the story of how the Quran was put together, and it's very clear that there was no written Quran in 632. So when Muhammad dies, they have this battle in 632 to 634. Abu Bakr is the caliph, and at the battle, a number of those who had memorized the Quran died. So there's a crisis on their hand, because if all those who memorized the Quran died, then there's no Quran. So they get Zayd ibn Thabit, who is the secretary of Muhammad, to write the Quran down. So he does that in 632, not 652, but 632. Gives the copy to Umar, who gives it to his daughter Hafsa, who used to be one of the wives of Muhammad. She sticks it under her bed and leaves it there for 20 years. Rather odd that she leaves it there for 20 years. In 652, there's another battle. This one is not at Yamama, the first one. This one is in Azerbaijan. And after the battle with the Syrian Muslims and the Iraqi Muslims, they go to the mosque to pray and to recite the Quran. And these Iraqis and the Syrians are reciting it different than those from Medina.
That's right.
And Hudayfa, who is there, who's in charge of that, he is angered and he starts coming to fisticuffs, blows with them, and he biddles down, back down to Medina and says to Uthman, we've got a problem here. We've got to get the Quran in one version. Otherwise, it's going to be like the Christians who have many different Bibles. We must have just one Quran in one dialect. And he has Zayd ibn Thabit take that book that had been hidden under the bed and rewrites the Quran. He rewrites it in the Qurayshi dialect. That happens in 652. So that is this book right here. According to every Muslim I know, that's this book. Let's put it up right side up. That's this book right here. Now, if that is the case, what happens next? Well, let's say what he does. He then sends it out 5 copies to these 5 cities. You notice I'm putting them up there on the screen. The 2 green ones is Mecca and Medina there down in the south. And then you have Basra there at the head of the Persian Gulf. You have Kufa, and then you have Damascus. So 5 cities, Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Medina. 2 in Iraq, 1 in Damascus in Syria, and 2 in Arabia. Sent to 5 said, why? So that these become the standard. And so that there will be no difficulties, there will be no dislocation, and certainly there will be no other Quran. So this is a standardization purpose. This is a censorship, because he doesn't want what happened up there in Azerbaijan. When he does that, it's interesting, because when you go to Al-Bukhari, volume 6, hadith number 510, it says that he takes all these other Qurans that were from Iraq and from Damascus, which is Syria, and he burns them. Burns them. Burns them. Why? Because they're different. They're different writing. Now, you're an Arab speaker, and you know that to burn dialectical differences, you need something to show the dialectical differences in an Arabic script. What is it you need to have to show these dialectical differences, the vowelizations that you have in the script? What do you need to have to do that in an Arabic script?
Well, we're going to need dotting, we need diacritical markings, things like that to help you reading.
Right.
Yeah.
We say potato, you say potato, we say tomato, you say tomato. There is, between the British and the Americans, we have different ways of saying it, and those are vowelization differences, and you write them differently depending on what it is. In the same way, in Arabic, you need to show the differences in a script. You need to have vowelization. You need the dhamma, the kasra, the fatha. You need to have the dots. You need the 5 dots, 3 above and 2 below. Dots and vowels didn't exist in 652. Is that a problem for you?
Of course, because we are looking, that I'm looking at early Quranic manuscripts, and by looking at the Quranic manuscripts that are considered to be in the first 200 years, not all of them, especially the early one, have any basically systems to help you in pronouncing the words. In fact, those were added later because they recognize the problem. You look at a bare word without dottings or marcations, and it's an open game. You can read it however you feel the context might indicate.
So how could there be dialectical difference written in a written text that can be burned?
Well,
you don't burn someone's pronunciation
that's right.
from their lips.
Exactly.
You,
You burn
their
something that is completely different, right?
You can
Or
see,
disagrees with you.
You can see this is 9th century Bukhari redacting us back into the 7th century. In the 9th century, there would have been dots and vowels. He is speaking about his own time. And this is a common error all the way through the traditions. They assume that what they know, like the dialectical differences in a written text, existed in the 7th century. They didn't do a historical survey. We know that there were only 16 letters. They didn't have dots and vowels that early. So you cannot have Uthman collecting scripts that were different, that were not Qurayshi, and burning them. Obviously, this is a historical anachronism.
And I want to add one more thing. You know that I'm looking at the Sana'a manuscripts. If the idea of burning something that does not really fit the bill match the reading, then why in the world we discovered a huge, basically, trove of evidence that manuscripts were actually protected, stored in basically an attic rather than being burned?
I want to also just show this, put this up. This is the Qira'ats. We're going to get into this later. These are the Qira'ats. And these are the 7 that, according to every Muslim, were the 7 readings, the 7 dialects. That's what every Muslim says, that existed at the time of Muhammad. These were given by Jibril to Muhammad, the 7 readings, because when Muhammad was reciting it, the people from other areas could not understand what he was saying. So Jibril gave him 7 readings. I just want to show you the cities that these 7 readings come from. Nafi comes from Medina. Okay, that could be Qurayshi. Ibn Kathir comes from Mecca. That would be Qurayshi. Abu Amr comes from Basra. That is Iraq. Ibn Amir comes from Damascus. That's Syria. Asim, Hamza, and Al-Qisai all come from Kufa. That's Iraq. So of the 7, 4 of them come from Iraq and Syria, the very places where these were burned. Yet these are the 7 that supposedly existed at the time of Muhammad. If that is the case, you've got a real problem here. Why would he be burning the very things that the major 7, the Qira'at, these are the readings, the creme de la creme, the best of the best, as Yasser Qadi always calls them. Why would he be burning the very things that actually where they came from?
At best case scenario, it's a political issue. At worst case, we have different Qurans.
More than that, you're going to see, I haven't given you the dates. That's coming for another episode. When you look at the dates, these are all 8th, 9th, and 10th century Qurans. Not one of them is from the time of Muhammad. It's not even from the same century as Muhammad.
Speaking of that, what would be the next episode?
Well, we're not finished yet. We're not finished. I want to take a look at this map again, go back to this map, because then something else happens in the 7th century. Suddenly, 3 other Qurans start to appear. One in Damascus, written by Ubay ibn Ka'b, and it has 116 surahs. 116? You're supposed to have 114. That's 2 more surahs than what are needed. Another appears in Baghdad, written by a guy named Ibn Mas'ud, and he only has 110 surahs. That's 4 less than what's in the Quran.
And some even argue 111, but still it's missing few.
It doesn't have as many as the one that Zayd ibn Thabit has, or the one that we have today. And Ibn Musa has 114, but it's not the same surahs. So you have 3 different Qur'ans in 3 different cities. Notice where the red circles are. They're all in Iraq and in Syria. That's hundreds of miles further north. And what's interesting, so we have 5 Qur'ans sent to 5 cities. We don't have one of these Qur'ans today. Not one of these Qur'ans that we have today to look at. We don't have Zayd ibn Thabit, we don't have Ubay ibn Ka'b, we don't have Ibn Mas'ud, we don't have Ibn Musa. How do we know about these Qur'ans? It's the standard Islamic narratives that tell us about these Qur'ans. And when Dr. Arthur Jeffrey looked at the standard Islamic narrative, he found 15,000 differences between those 3 and Zayd ibn Thabit. 15,000
And
differences.
I have his document, and I'm going through it myself right now.
Can you then see there's a problem here?
Absolutely.
Huge problem. What's next? We're going to look at some of the manuscripts that we do have today.
Wonderful. And I think everybody is excited already when it comes to the manuscripts of the Quran. It's very damaging, really, because that's what the foundation of Islam is resting on. Until next time, have a blessed day.